everybody, so today I wanted to talk to you about stress. By the way, this is OCD Live with Greymond, and we're on every day at 11 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And so for the first part, I usually do just a little bit of conversation on a subject about OCD, and then for the second part, we'll take some questions if there are any. And hopefully you guys can hear me now. I'm sorry for all of the delays in this, and we've tried for a few days and it was just not working. So finally now it seems like it's working. So I'm really hoping that it is. So feel free in the chat area here. Feel free to ask me a question and I will reply. And you can be as open as you want to be. Just make sure I kind of understand the question, but you don't have to, tell personal details or anything like that. So the topic I wanted to talk to you guys about today is the topic of stress. And we're experiencing stress in different areas of your life, but when you have OCD and you have real life stress on top of having OCD stress, it becomes a problem all around. So you start to have a situation where you're always in a position of stress. So you have OCD stress, you have home stress, you have work stress, you have whatever it is. But altogether, it just creates a situation where your mind thinks you are in a panic position. So you're always panicking, basically. So as you go on being like this, your mind becomes more and more stressed, because when you are dealing with a stressful situation, it's not just outward stress like, oh, I'm having a lot on my mind. Your body is actually creating stress hormones, and it's producing them en masse, much more than it should be and much more than it's really designed to produce. So when you do this to yourself day after day, week after week, month after month, you start to develop a very kind of bad situation happening. And it's bad not just for you and for your overall being, but also for OCD. And I see a lot of the time that when people have OCD, they feel worse when it comes to when they're under these extreme stress levels. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're managing stress as you're getting over OCD. I'm not sure what program you're following, but if you're following a program that, sorry about this, that makes you be in the process of overcoming OCD, then you know that it's going to take some time. It's not going to be an instant situation of recovery, right? So as you are recovering, you need to manage stress in other areas, and I would say, try to lower that stress as much as possible to a reasonable, manageable level. So if your regular stress is, say, like you lead a life that's, say, 5 out of 10 stress, try to reduce it to like 3 out of 10. And the way to do it is, first of all, your immediate circle needs to understand that you have OCD and that you're working on your recovery. Now, again, this is not like a get out of jail free card, so to speak, right? That, I don't want to do this because I have OCD, or I don't want to do that because I have OCD. Because, first of all, other people can see if you're using it to your advantage. And second is that it starts to become an avoidance issue too, that you're avoiding situations because of OCD, which makes everything kind of worse. So what you want to do, though, is manage the stress level. And at the same time, add practices that will help you lower the stress levels, such as meditation, being in nature, eating right, not consuming stimulants, not exposing yourself to negative, say for example, to the news, to negative programming, like negative shows. And I know they're like, we all like these shows and we watch them, but honestly, if the show is not really showing you something positive, and you're seeing negative, like, people dying, all of this struggle, all of this kind of stuff, then that's what your mind is getting out of it. So you're almost adding stress rather than taking it away, Same thing with music. You want to make sure that you're listening to music that is uplifting and it's making you feel better. It doesn't mean you can't listen to, your favorite band or anything like that, but just make sure that the type of songs that you listen to are talking about positive situations, such as, you know, becoming a better person or whatever the case may be. Not, you know, my girl left me, everything is bad, blah, 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 end of the song. You know, that's not uplifting. You know, that's just going to make you more depressed. And just really watching in every area of your life, um, if you're feeling better or worse about certain situation, and if the situation is making you miserable, then change it to a positive, you know? And that goes for situations and for relationships as well, that if somebody is completely negative to you all the time, you don't have to expose yourself to this relationship, to this situation all the time. In my opinion, anyways, you know, because we all have people like this in our lives that, you know, kind of make the situation worse when you're already bad. It doesn't mean you're supposed to cut them out of your life, but you can control how much you talk to them, and you can control how much negativity they bring into your life, you know. So it's reducing the stress and reducing the negativity, which is stress, as you are recovering. Now, what does recovering entail? So recovering means actively trying to mimic a person who doesn't have OCD, in short. Okay, there's obviously more to it, and you know, I'm sure, you know, most of you guys have listened to my channel long enough to know that you know, kind of what the recovery is all about. But in the basic form of it, you're trying to tell your brain that everything is fine. There is no need to send these types of thoughts. There's no need to worry. You're not in any danger, and you don't need to get these types of thoughts any longer, because that's why your brain is sending you these thoughts, because it thinks you're in some sort of danger, so it sends you thoughts as if you're in that danger. Just to give you an example of what I mean, in case you don't understand what I'm talking about. Um, Say, for example, this is a completely random example, but it will give you an overview of what I'm talking about. Say you went into the woods one day and you saw a scary big wolf or a bear or something like that, right? A big giant animal. And you got scared and you ran away. Now, a few weeks later, you went back to the woods. What do you think your brain is going to do? Your brain is going to throw the thoughts at you, like you'll see the bear or whatever attacked you in every shrub, in every tree, behind every bush. You'll see it everywhere, because your brain's going to be like, oh no, that's it, no, that's it, no, that's it. Does this kind of remind you of what's happening with OCD? This is the exact same thing that's going on with OCD. The only thing is that when you went into this forest, in my example, right, you reacted with fear when you saw the bear. So you went in, you saw the bear, you reacted with fear, you ran away. Now next time you're going to get that fear again, not even controlled by you, just from your brain sending you the thought, okay? So same thing with OCD. As you're driving along, you hit a speed bump, you think, oh my God, what if it's a person? You run away, or you check so many times, and then you run away. You know, you get even more scared, you get even more panicked, you know, thinking about it later on. You know, next time you drive, guess what? Another thought, same as before. So no matter what your OCD is, always know that you can control your OCD entirely by just following this method, that you need to be acting as if everything is fine, there's nothing wrong. Because, for example, just like in the example with the forest and the bear, okay? If the person went into the forest and saw the bear and said, oh, okay, well, you know, it's a bear, whatever, but didn't get so scared, then the brain wouldn't send the person the fear next time. Okay, but it's different because it's a real situation. You kind of should be scared of the bear, but you know, but with OCD, it's the same thing. Where if you have a situation that's OCD provoking, right? Such as, okay, you drove by something, you hit a bump, you thought it was a person, you went and checked. If you wouldn't have checked, you wouldn't have had OCD later. You wouldn't have had so much anxiety coming to you later. It would have just kind of faded away. You would have still been anxious for a little while, but it would have went away. And the next time you were driving, you either would get like a little bit of a thought, or you wouldn't get any thought at all. So what you're doing now is really controlling your output later on, and what's going to happen later on with your OCD. Is it going to get better, say tomorrow, or worse? And that's entirely based on what you're doing now, how you're reacting to the thoughts now, because it's all about your reaction. Unfortunately, the main reason why OCD sticks around is because, just like I gave you example with the bear and then the example with OCD, your mind on its own has no way to tell which one is which thought is for real important and you are in actual danger, and which is just, you know, not important. It has no way to tell the difference between the two. So the only way it can tell is by looking at your reaction. And if you're reacting wrong, then guess what? The whole situation gets messed up, right? So it's very important that you react correctly to the correct situations, and not take situations seriously that do not need to be taken seriously. And at the same time, just like when I started, what I said, reduce your stress levels. Because, when you're in a high stress situation, sometimes these things happen, Um, I mean, we all go through stressful periods in our lives, but when you are in that period, it's important for you to take time to relax, take time to slow down, all of this kind of stuff. So don't take it seriously, don't take it personally, you know? And you have to understand that it's gonna take some time. It's not gonna be instant. you know and also, I wanted to talk about the question that I had yesterday, or actually a few days ago, and I'm very sorry for the delay in replying to you. Um, but so the person was asking how to beat their specific type of OCD. I'm not going to go into it. The person knows who I'm referring to in all of this. But basically what you need to do is that every time you get a thought, like your OCD thought related to your OCD theme that you can, obviously identify, you need to say, this is not true, these are just thoughts, and really not put any importance on the fact that why you're getting these thoughts, all of these things. Because the reason why you get OCD thoughts has to only do with the fact that you were scared by this thought before. Just exactly like I talked to you about the bear in the woods, You got scared by the bear, you're going to get more thoughts. The difference is that people who don't have OCD, they also get these same thoughts, but they get them so, like, they get them and immediately dismiss them. So the situation becomes so mild because they dismiss them instantly that they don't even remember that they got them. They just kind of thought, well, whatever, it's a thought. They're not attaching importance to them. But when a person with OCD gets them, specifically the thought that they find like bad or inappropriate or whatever, they start to think, well, what does this mean about me? Well, am I a bad person? Well, what is it? What's happening, right? So, and the more you do that, the more of these thoughts you're going to get. Because basically, as you are trying to get reassurance or questioning yourself in your mind or avoiding or doing compulsions, you're saying to your mind, with all of those actions, they send the exact same signal that the situation is dangerous. I need to be protected. Please send me more thoughts. And this is the opposite of the signal you want to send, right? But this is how your mind sees it. So your mind really understands it to mean that, okay, this is important, and this is a scary situation. I better send more thoughts. So it sends you more thoughts. You get more scared, react with more fear, more reassurance, and you start to get worse and worse and worse. And this is like this for every person who has OCD. And it was like that for me as well. So when you start to go down this kind of rabbit hole and you want to recover, right? Like when you are ready to start recovering, you need to pull back on all of these behaviors, and say, you know what? I'm not going to do these things anymore. I'm just going to let the thoughts be. I'm not going to put any value in any stock in the thought, and just say that, that I'm not a bad person, that there's nothing wrong, there's nothing going on, and that I'm fine, And the more you do that, because basically, the fastest way to recovery is every moment of every day you have to be saying to your mind that everything is fine. And not only by kind of talking the talk, but also walking the walk. That act like everything is fine. Act like you don't have OCD. Pick somebody who is like going to be your kind of person who you kind of look at for what they're doing and mimic that. Because, you know, by seeing how they're reacting to things and what they're doing and recreating that, you're sending a strong signal that nothing is wrong, that everything is fine, and your brain will, I promise you, your brain will readjust. But before your brain readjusts, and this is an important thing here, before your brain readjusts, it's going to throw every possible thought it can at you to get you to come back to the anxiety state. Because your mind is used to feeling the anxiety, so it's going to really try um, to get to back to the state at which it's comfortable. And it's comfortable, you're not comfortable feeling the anxiety, but it's comfortable because it equates anxiety with safety. So it thinks that, okay, the more anxiety you get, the more safe you are, there's nothing, that means there's nothing wrong, all of this kind of stuff, right? Because if you're getting anxiety, that means you're acting on it, that means you're solving the situation, that means you're like you're viewing the situation as dangerous and you're handling it. When you refuse to handle it, when you refuse to feel anxiety, when you refuse to take it seriously, your mind starts to panic because it thinks you're walking into a forest about to see a bear and you're not reacting, you know? Because again, it can't understand between the two. So as you start to your first steps in recovery, you know, the first week, first 2 weeks, they're going to be very, very difficult. And it was difficult for me. It was difficult for pretty much everybody who I've helped get over OCD. So you just have to kind of be prepared for it, know that it's coming, and don't back down. Because if you back down during this very critical first period, your thoughts will stay there for a very, very long time. You know, you can get stuck on it, is what I'm saying. They will have to stay, obviously, but you can get stuck because, you know, if you kind of do this thing which some people do, where they do reassurance one time and then they don't do reassurance one time, and then they do and then they don't, right? They're not moving anywhere in their recovery. They're staying in the same place and just kind of one step forward, one step back, really didn't move at all, you know? So, and because your brain kind of knows that or thinks that that you're in danger, and it's throwing like the worst possible thoughts at you that first week, you don't want to kind of get stuck in this very bad position, because your brain is on high alert, really trying to send you everything, and you're too scared to move forward into the actual recovery as it progresses. You know, because after the week or two, depending on how long you've had the thought, sometimes it's shorter, sometimes it's longer, but after that, it's going to be much, much easier, and I promise you that. But that first few weeks, you know, you really kind of have to be tough, be brave, and just keep going forward. You know, and bravery actually has a lot to do with recovery, because to take those first few steps when you think that you could be in actual danger, or that you could be a bad person, or whatever the case may be, you know, you kind of have to put all of that aside and just step forward and say, you know, I don't care what OCD tells me. I'm just going to be myself and do what I want to do, not what OCD wants me to do. So if OCD kind of like, when you walk by somebody, it wants you to switch over to the other side of the street instead of walking by them, like as you see them coming towards you or something like that. You can either switch the street and send the signal to OCD that you are scared, that, you know, please basically send me more thoughts, or you can stay on the same street, really kind of be brave about it and just walk forward, and you'll see that you'll walk once past the person and you'll get scared. For example, like if you're having trouble walking by a person or something like that, because that's a very popular OCD. So you walk by them once, you walk by another person, another person, another person. After you walk by like 50 people in this state of anxiety, you will start to lose that anxious feeling. It's not because your mind gets used to it. It sees that, okay, you walk by 50 people, still fine, nothing happened, you're safe, you know, and so it stops putting so much emphasis on this as well, right? So as I promise you that as you keep doing these exposures, that's what it's called. It's called an exposure, when you're exposing yourself to the feared situation to some degree. you start to see that, you are a good person. There isn't anything wrong. But if you start to hide away from these situations and say, well, I want to protect myself, so I'm not going to put myself in these situations, then you really are painting yourself into a corner by saying that you're not doing them. You're going to create more situations. So say you're not doing situation A. Well, situation A is almost like situation B. So your mind says, well, what if situation B is dangerous too? So you start to avoid situation A and B. Then situation C comes up. Well, situation C is almost like situation B, which is almost like situation A. And do you see my point here that, OCD does have a tendency to progress and spread. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're sticking to the same plan, and that you're not allowing yourself to avoid to do the compulsions or to seek reassurance. And another big part of seeking reassurance, which we probably will do, this is kind of an overview, and I'll do I'll do show every day, obviously, but we'll do shows on different topics. But when you're doing reassurance, when you're seeking reassurance from another person, it's not good, okay? Because you're saying that the situation is relevant, it's important, and your mind is gonna make you feel worse because you're doing that. But if you're seeking reassurance from within yourself, like even like online research or just thinking back to the situation, trying to solve the situation, that's even worse, because if you ask reassurance from a person, that's just one time. So, you asked them, they said no, everything is fine, you moved on. But if you ask from within yourself and you try to solve it, it's like you're continuously asking again and again and again and again. Because you can't do that with another person, right? You ask them once, even if something is not clear, which 99% of the time, OCD person will come up with some way in which it wasn't clear and will want to ask again. But, not everybody's going to ask twice or 3 times or 4 times. But within your own mind, you can continue solving this endlessly. And that means you're endlessly sending signals to your mind that this situation is dangerous. So your mind starts to view the situation as ultra dangerous and send you thoughts all the time. And even at that point, it's you can still recover from this. All you have to do is say, enough is enough. I'm sick of all these thoughts. They're all the same. I don't have proof of anything. Nothing is really wrong. Like if you have fears of like jail and things like that, the cops are not knocking at your door. There's nothing wrong. You need to keep going and move on. And that's, and you need to say to yourself that that's what I'm doing. I'm moving on. I'm not going to take these thoughts seriously anymore, And just really I understand that it's a lot easier for me to say that and a lot harder to implement it. And I'm telling you, I've had a really, really, really bad OCD. If you guys listen to my other videos, you might know more about them, about like my struggle and stuff like that, but it was really, really bad for me. It got so bad that, I couldn't leave my house at one point. So, it wasn't one of those things where, I don't know what I'm talking about. I really do. And, I really want to help, because I see so many people that, have OCD that kind of say it's almost becoming like a trend, I find, where people are like, well, I have OCD and I have these compulsions, and and I do these compulsions. And usually people who talk like that are not in a severe OCD yet, but they're like kind of in a mild medium state. So they think that, oh, okay, well, I'm not so bad yet, nothing is really, like it's fine, and I can deal with it, right? And they do these compulsions, and then year after year, or months after months, year after year, it gets worse and worse and worse until they get to this severe OCD state. And then they're like, you know what? I think I was doing something wrong, and by that time, yeah, you can get over it, and usually people who come to see me usually had OCD since they were little, but only really had it like severe for about around, I would say anywhere from 10 years to about um, a year or something like that. So between 10 years and 1 year, somewhere there. So just a few years, but at the same time, it's a few years of you believing different things that are not true. So it will take a few months to undo that. It's not going to take years to undo. Even if you had OCD for 10 years, it will not take 10 years to undo. So, but it will take a few months. So you kind of have to be prepared for it and prepare for the fight, because there will be a fight within yourself, whether to solve these thoughts, whether to take them seriously or to let them go. So you have to make sure that you're always just like letting it go, moving forward, letting it go, moving forward, and just going from one exposure to another until you get to a point where, for example, you're afraid of this, and this. And for the last 10 years, you have done very little in those 10 areas. So, um, you know, as you start to recover from OCD, then you'll see that as you do exposures and you kind of face those 10 OCD thoughts, for example, 10, right? Like 10 OCD thoughts that you were scared of, and you face them again and again and again through exposures, you will see that they will start to mellow out and go away, But it takes a little bit of time to do that, It takes a little bit of time for them to go away. So I would say that, and as you're doing the recovery, make sure that you are keeping the stress levels to a minimum, because, I mean, you just kind of have to put it in perspective that right now what you're doing is recovering from OCD, and that's going to set you up for the rest of your life, If you can get over this, I mean, after all you went through, you can get over everything else, So, put everything aside. If you have, obviously we all have jobs and responsibilities and all this stuff, but you don't have to do overtime. You don't have to take on extra projects. You will later. But right now, you just need to focus on relaxing, taking it easy, and getting over OCD. At least for the first, I would say, for the first month of recovery, because that's the toughest month. After that, it gets easier and easier and easier, and you'll be able to handle more things. And you will do that as you are feeling better, you can start adding things that you were doing before. Now, this is not to say that you should start avoidance habits, because avoidance is just going to lead to a thing where you'll have a hard time going back to them. But do it maybe like sometimes you take something on, sometimes you don't. But even the stuff that you take on should be very, very minimal. Yeah, so by exposure, I mean face your fears in like, no, obviously, like don't put yourself in actual like dangerous situations or anything like that. But think of somebody else who who does these things on a daily basis, right? So say for example, like if again, go back to the example of being afraid of walking by somebody. Well, everybody walks by everybody all the time, especially if you're, depending on where you live, if you live in a busy city, if you drive a lot, it's more rare. But if you live in a busy place, then, that would be a common exposure. So there's nothing dangerous here. So yeah, put yourself in those situations as much as possible, and you will see that nothing happens, So definitely, and and just not doing the avoidance, because the avoidance is kind of that's what sends the signal that you're scared, that this you're sending a signal to your mind that you think that the situation is real. And once you do send that signal that you think the situation is real, your mind takes that and sends you more thoughts. So you want to say, you know what, I'm going to walk by this person or whatever, and I'll be fine, And if I get OCD, then I get OCD, but I'm not going to avoid any longer. And you walk by, you will get OCD. You have to prepare for that. I promise you, you most likely will get OCD. Very much, probably for sure, pretty much, you will get OCD. But you've showed your mind that this was not important. So you will get OCD, you'll get over it, and next time you're in the situation, you have to walk by that not that specific person, but some other person again. and you'll see that, again, nothing happened. You will still get OCD, but you will not have OCD as much as you did the first time. So every time you're facing the same exposure, your OCD is going to get less and less and less. And you have to get, with each of one of your things that you're avoiding, you have to get to a point where you can do it, and you can do it with minimal OCD. And this is practice. So every time you get an OCD thought, I would view it as practice. And again, as soon as you get the OCD thought, like say you walked by a person and you thought, oh my God, whatever the thought may be, that at this point, the thought, even though it feels strong, it's very weak. It doesn't have a lot of power over you because you just got it. But you haven't thought about it, you haven't ruminated, you haven't asked anybody, you haven't checked or anything, so it has no power. If at this point you really force yourself to let go, get busy with other things, get your mind refocused on something else, give it a lot of things to focus on, it will go away. But if you take it seriously, then it's not really a good exposure, because good exposure, it's called exposure and response prevention. So you do the exposure, but you prevent the response of fear. So you're sending a signal that here I am, I'm exposed to the situation, however, I have no fear. I'm fine, I'm not going to buy into it. So and that's how basically it's done. We will talk about more on these topics in later shows. This is kind of just the first show. I was hoping that even the sound was working today, so I'm happy it's working and everything is good. So I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll discuss these topics in more details tomorrow and then as the days progress. I hope you guys join me, and again, it's 11 to 11:30 p.m. in the evening Eastern time. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening today, and I will see you guys tomorrow.